Hey everyone, it's Swank Ivy again with another Letters to an Asexual, and this is number 102. Today we're going to talk about something within the asexual community, and it is the gender dynamics between asexual men and asexual women. Interestingly, if you were not aware, census data that is taken on the internet for our community does suggest that women and non-binary people both outnumber asexual men in the ace community. So it's most likely that at least asexual men who would answer a survey like this and maybe be in a time and a place and a willingness to answer that way on a survey are outnumbered in our community. So listening to what they have to say is very interesting because, of course, your gender is relevant to how you are perceived as far as availability for sex, expectations for the kind of sex that you would be expected to have, etc. You all know that. But I feel a little bit bad about featuring this one the way that I'm going to, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because it is an attitude I have encountered both in this specific case and several other times, and also from people who perceive it from outside the community. And that is that it is harder to be an asexual man, and that being an ace woman is basically like being a straight woman somehow, that we really don't have any real problems, while ace men do have problems because of plenty of dynamics that affect them that supposedly don't affect us. So even though I'm going to be kind of ragging on another person in our community who may or may not have changed his mind since we had this conversation, I do think it's important to talk about these things, and I just hope that this person was able to find resources and maybe get out of some of the situations that he was describing in this mail. So this was an email that was sent to me in response to an online essay that I had. It's one of my earliest pieces of ACE content that I wrote just for my website, a sort of rant that developed into sort of an info site at some point. And this was the one that I sometimes reference in history discussions where I talk about how I got into ace activism, where I say I made a top 10 list. And this was like a comment that this guy left on my top 10 list. And I just want to say before I go into actually reading the text that not only is there obvious oppression Olympics going on, but there is some pretty nasty stuff in this one where he talks about homophobic hate crimes, and there is some discussion of sexual assault, and there is some discussion that includes homophobic slurs. Nothing too graphic, but these things are mentioned and they are kind of central. So just in case you're in a frame of mind that you don't want to hear that sort of thing, or you in general don't consume content that includes those things, I wouldn't watch this video. So beginning now, I will read his initial message to me, which goes like this. I can't help but notice a sense of snarkiness in some of your answers. Also, your top 10 is great for women, but useless for us men. We're lucky in that we don't get women trying to convert us or tell us we haven't met a real woman, but we do suffer from other worse attitudes, from people who don't understand, don't want to understand, and or don't believe we're non-sexual. Wait, asexual men don't get told they haven't met a real woman and no one tries to convert them? I guess all those stories I've heard directly from asexual men must be bunk. Sorry, back to our regularly scheduled men are the real victims here rant. You think you need to explain to the world because they might not understand you? You worry at best of people thinking you're frigid, or that you haven't met Mr. Studley, or you're a lesbian. Ha! Tough life, eh? Even if you are labeled a lesbian, what's the worst thing that's gonna happen to you? They might think you're an amoral, naughty little girl. Big deal. 'Cause lesbian women are not in any way in danger of anything. Not for being gay, and certainly not for being women who refuse sex. Big deal. Sorry, I just keep interrupting. How rude of me. For us men, if your sexuality comes into question, if they notice you don't show an interest in women, they don't notice that you're not showing an interest in anyone, or if you don't wolf whistle the passing women when you're stuck in the company of real men, which I don't do, or if you tell them you're just not interested in sex, which is completely out of the question, they immediately think you're a homosexual. And in certain crowds, that can get your head beaten in with a steel pipe. Just because you have no sexual desire and are mistaken for a homosexual. So I'd rather not tell anyone anything and stay alive. I don't think leveling with strangers / work colleagues / strangers down the pub, etc. is important enough to risk getting your head beaten in. I could sure use a top 10 list of ways to deal with people who don't understand, don't want to understand, feel threatened by your difference, and want to smash you to a pulp because of it. For you, I sense you have a bit of fun with it. But if you're a male, it can be a very dangerous area in certain circles. It is nice to know I'm not an enigma, though. To know I'm not alone. Well, I'm glad that I helped him a little bit, but this BS about how it's completely out of the question for a man to let anyone think he's gay, or it means death, is kind of over the top, yes? Poor guy, forced by such things as peer pressure to feel that he must whistle at women to uphold the status quo and not get killed. Okay, I don't want to downplay the seriousness of the potential for violence for any queer person for being queer, of course, but this guy's ignoring that out gay men exist and they don't find it unacceptable to come out because of the threat of violence. Like I said, I don't want to downplay that that is a real threat, but he's acting like it's just completely unacceptable to tell the truth about oneself if you're not straight. So it seems ignorant to act like men alone face an unacceptably high chance of violence, while I'm just skipping through life, not in danger at all if I come out as queer. And yeah, so he's not the only gender that faces potential violence for being truthful about his orientation. The response I sent to him is here. So I quote him saying, "I can't help but notice a sense of snarkiness in some of your answers. Your top 10 is great for women, but useless for us men." It's useless for men? Not according to the tons of asexual men who have thanked me for it. You can look in the comments if you like. Asexuality is indeed more prevalent with women, at least among those who are out and answering surveys, but there are plenty of men too. Quoting, "We're lucky in that we don't get women trying to convert us or tell us we haven't met a real woman, but we do suffer from other worse attitudes from people who don't understand, don't want to understand, and or don't believe we're non-sexual. You think you need to explain to the world because they might not understand you? So basically, you think your life is hard? My life is much harder, you pampered little bitch. Come on, this isn't a pissing contest." Quoting, "You worry at best of people thinking you're frigid or that you haven't met Mr. Studley or you're a lesbian. Tough life, eh? Even if you are labeled a lesbian, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to you? They might think you're an amoral, naughty little girl. Big deal." Or, if you travel in certain circles, which is why I don't, some man could easily say, "This girl hasn't been shown a good time. I am going to take her back to my place and prove it to her and convert her. She'll thank me later." Yes, that is part of this oh-so-tough life of a female asexual. That is one of the many possible outcomes that could occur from someone coming to the conclusion that I just need to be shown a good time. Just like the other items in my essay, like concluding I'm a lesbian, etc., these points have ramifications, some of which could end in violence conceivably. Mainly, I get ticked that everyone thinks I need fixing, and it's really annoying to have to live with people's inability to process my asexuality, but there are dangers just as real for women as the ones you're describing. You don't think women get killed for being thought gay or raped for refusing advances? Guess again. Quoting, "For us men, your sexuality comes into question if they notice you don't show an interest in women, they don't notice that you're not showing an interest in anyone, or if you don't wolf whistle the passing women when you're stuck in the company of real men, which I don't do, or if you tell them you're just not interested in sex, which is completely out of the question, they immediately think you're a homosexual." I'm aware that certain close-minded people think this way and have seen it in action. I won't deny that's a pain in the ass, and being a gay man might be more difficult in some ways in today's society than being a gay woman because of it, but guess what? Number one, telling them you're not interested in sex is not completely out of the question for every man. because there are plenty of asexual men who are public about it. Why is it they can do it and you cannot? If your family and friends wouldn't understand and you'd rather not risk the relationships, that's your call. But it's not out of the question any more than it's out of the question for trans people to come out. Oh yeah, try being a girl who's seen as a boy and tell your family and friends that you want to transition. People have to do this all the time. If you think asexual men who, oh God no, might be thought gay have it hard, perhaps you should imagine what would have happened to you should you have been born trans. But people who want to live the life that feels comfortable to them sometimes have to make some hard choices. I don't see all of them saying it's out of the question. I usually don't make comparative arguments like that anymore, trying to say that anybody's life is harder than somebody else's or try this other life that we perceive would also be difficult. But I was just trying to think of things that were along a different axis that he could probably imagine how his family or these wolf whistling men he apparently hangs out with would think if he were to have been a trans person, and try to tell them that. And that is, that's a reality for plenty of people. And, we all have to make difficult choices about how we're going to talk to the people that we love and care about, what the truths of our lives are. But the reason that I don't tend to make direct comparisons like that anymore is that I worry about it sounding like Oppression Olympics, or that I'm designating one group as the most oppressed and saying that everybody else just needs to take a seat until that group is recognized as having the worst problems. You know what I mean? Just that's why I don't go there anymore. But this is a pretty old message, and I don't think it's entirely inappropriate. I just wanted to let you know that that kind of comparison can sometimes be taken wrong, and send the wrong message. Anyway. Next quote. And in certain crowds, that can get your head beaten in with a steel pipe, just because you have no sexual desire and are mistaken for a homosexual, so I'd rather not tell anyone and stay alive. And if they think you're gay, oh my God, they might kill you. How do the millions of gay people in America handle it then? Do they have a much tougher life than yours since they are out about being gay? Are they all dodging daily murder attempts? This is a bunch of poor me whining here. If you're an asexual guy, it's indeed probably harder for other guys to understand it, because people are always claiming the male sex drive is higher, and a lot of guys jump to conclusions faster about other guys. But don't tell me you don't have a choice about whether you come out while women do. If you are traveling in circles where you feel you might get murdered for not thinking with your dick, maybe you need new friends rather than me needing a reality check on male asexuality. Quote, I don't think leveling with strangers / work colleagues / strangers down the pub, etc. is important enough to risk getting your head beaten in. I can't say I've had any desire to level with strangers down at the pub or otherwise, or work colleagues about my sexuality or lack thereof. It's none of their business, unless you have some reason you want to tell them. I'm not wearing a button advertising it. Quote, I could sure use a top 10 list of ways to deal with people who don't understand, don't want to understand, feel threatened by your difference, and want to smash you to a pulp because of it. I'm not equipped to write a top 10 list from the point of view of a male asexual, because I am not one, and have not had the experience of being one. However, I don't believe there are any points on my list that do not generalize to men. Maybe you'd just list your annoyances in a different order. I find it kind of screwed up that you're around people you truly think might kill you if they even suspect you're gay, or that admitting asexuality means they'd inevitably assume you're gay. Oh my God, unacceptable. It sucks, but I say let them think what they want. Nothing makes you gay except being sexually attracted exclusively to other guys, and maybe eventually they'd understand that, but why would you want them in your life if you actually fear you'd be killed over it if someone makes a certain assumption, or if they'd assault a gay person who wasn't you? And again, how do all the openly gay people in the world avoid this inevitable assassination you have dreamed up? Quote, for you, I sense you have a bit of fun with it, but if you're a male, it can be a very dangerous area in certain circles. And that's why those circles are dangerous to begin with. I can and do have fun with some aspects of it, but that's what I do with every aspect of my life. My attitude toward asexuality would not be different if I was getting frequent "die you dyke" death threats. I'd just have to start being more careful about who I told if the world reacted that way. It doesn't mean I'm going to pretend to be another orientation or that any suggestion I have for you would involve lying about your sexuality. You're basically in a lose-lose situation if you keep quiet about it, because unless you decide you're going to wolf whistle to make life easier, you don't have a choice before these people are going to decide you must be gay anyway. I don't think it's naive of me to suggest maybe there's an education opportunity there for you to give to others if they are open to it, and if they aren't, it isn't their business. Something like "I've never met someone who's my type" tends to be a good brush off for people who won't leave you alone about it, and it's true. That's about all I can say. Quote, "It is nice to know I'm not an enigma, though, to know I'm not alone." Is my essay your first exposure to asexuality? Because you seem pretty much unaware that there are male asexuals who are out about it. Asexuals, including female ones, are less common than most other orientations, but they're certainly not non-existent. Might I suggest that the next time you communicate with me, it not be with an attitude of, "If you think your life is hard, top this." I don't have anything to prove to you, and I don't think there's anything you need to prove to me. So that's a very particular stripe of "you don't have real problems," which I have to say does not often come from within the ace community, but I have seen it from other people too, especially from some asexual purists who believe that demisexual or gray sexual people aren't valid, or that if you're asexual but you're not sex repulsed, then your life is easy, etc. I'm not going to oversimplify the issue by saying, "Oh, we as a community just need to get along," because, I mean, what would you actually do with a statement like that, really? I mean, without any kind of guidance or really perspective on what is causing these issues. We have homophobia in our community. We have transphobia in our community. We have racism. We have ableism. I've spoken on all of those things. Obviously, I think they're a very big problem, and I think that it's just a very common thing inside and outside marginalized communities to downplay other people's problems if we don't have them ourselves. And that's why it's just really important to listen to each other. I mean, I have talked to lots of ace men who have problems that I either don't have, or they have a problem that I haven't had as bad as them, or it didn't affect me as strongly as it did them. And it does seem like, I could imagine that it would affect men more, such as how often being sexually successful is tied to respect as a person for men, whereas for women, it's just regarded differently. And it's hard for me to even speak on, people who are non-binary, how it affects them, because so many bigoted and ignorant people look at the gender first and just say, well, that person is screwed up, period. So every issue that they have that might relate to their sexuality, or any problems that they have, it's because they can't figure out what gender they are or something like that. So it really depends, I think, for them on what gender bigots expect them to be. So I like to hear about issues that people who are not me have, especially if they have an angle on how I can help. But I don't think it is possible for everybody, for a broad issue like an activist like me, to be able to properly portray everybody's individual problems and to be able to examine it in really a meaningful way. So we need all of these voices. We need more men talking about it. We need more of the minorities within minorities talking about their experience and how these intersections are very relevant, and how they can sometimes intersect and combine and multiply some of the problems that we have. For instance, being an ace person and also being a woman, those two things can't really be separated for me. I've always been both of those things. So I experience asexuality as a woman experiencing it. And sometimes, because it's so common, for instance, for men to feel entitled to answers about my sexuality, or feel entitlement to my attention if they think that I'm hot and I'm not already married, they think I owe them a chance, or these ridiculous perspectives like that it must be because I've never had good sex and I should have sex with them. I mean, these are manifestations of sexism that most women do have to contend with regardless of their orientation. I mean, lesbians get propositioned that way, straight women get propositioned that way, and there's plenty of, sexual entitlement and expectation that sex would change your mind for other genders too. But because sexism enhances some people's feeling that they are entitled to my attention or my sexuality, it is different for me than it is for a man. And most men are going to experience certain aspects of asexuality in a completely different way than I do. And I am not disabled, I am not black, I am not neurodivergent. And everybody who has those perspectives has a valuable perspective to bring to ace activism. So really, I think the solution to having so much infighting and having so much oppression Olympics would be more diverse voices, that we not only have more people talking, but that we encourage each other to listen and be able to validate those perspectives and actively seek them out if they're not in your Twitter feed, if they're not on your Tumblr blog roll, or however you interact with these communities. That you should want to know those things. You should want to know more about how people different from you are handling issues that you may encounter differently. So, I don't think the person who wrote me that letter responded to my message. I don't have anything in my records. I don't remember if he responded, but I hope that he was able to get away from the people that he thought might murder him if they thought he was gay. That really disturbed me. And I hope that he was able to find some male asexual voices to follow and feel like he could get something from their activism that he evidently could not get from mine. And I do wish him well, even though he tried to have a pissing contest with me that was completely unnecessary. So that takes me to the end of this one. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble, and I'll be back next time with another Letters to an Asexual. Thank you.